The AfCFTA will pave the way to the free flow of goods and services, enabling businesses and entrepreneurs to access new markets. Consumers will benefit from the removal of trade barriers and business costs will be reduced. But by far the most and significant potential of the AfCFTA will be increasing the value of intra-Africa trade, which by some estimates is likely to rise by 15 to 25% by the year 2040.
Well, welcome to you. We're coming to you from the Sandton Convention Center, where today the second African Investment Forum got underway. It's an event that's hosted by both the Gauteng provincial government and the African Development Bank. And some messages that have come through is that the forum last year was instrumental in mobilizing funding for initiatives as diverse as the Accra SkyTrain, the Kigali Innovation City, the first road rail bridge project linking Kinshasa and Brazzaville. So we're having a conversation tonight to find out what sort of impacts this second gathering can surely have for the continent. We will be joined later on the show by the Vice President of the African Development Bank, Pierre Gouslane. And right now we have Adenrele Oni, welcome, from the Microfinance Bank, and Zodwa Mbele from the Development Bank of Southern Africa. Thank you so much for making the time tonight. We also have Muzi Matema from the Gauteng Growth and Development Agency. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Quite an important conversation that's being held here tonight. But Adenrele, remind us what is the importance or the role of international finance institutions in terms of gathering finance for big projects on the continent.
Thank you. And thank you for having me on the program. For there to be development, we need assistance, support from the development financial institution. And because they are the ones that have that fund with a view to bringing development. There can be development in infrastructure, there can be development in power, in energy without funding.
Okay, apparently they can't hear you, so you're going to have to use this mic.
Yeah. Sorry. The DFIs and the international funding agents, they have that large pulse that will bring development to Africa. There can never be development in energy, in infrastructure, in power, and the rest of them without funding. And local banks have little access to funding, but you realize that the DFIs are well positioned, are well funded to support some of these developmental projects. And they go across economies into various countries of Africa. That is an advantage and the benefit of having them around.
Ms. Bella, let's bring you in here. What is the role of the Development Bank of Southern Africa in this gathering in terms of advancing the infrastructural needs of the continent?
So thank you very much. I hope that, can you hear me? Confirm? Okay, so DBSA is one of the founding partners of the Africa Investment Forum. And I mean, as you know, DBSA has been there and largely financing infrastructure development, which is very catalytic for economic development. So now the role of the 7 founding partners really is to mobilize funding, but also to create a marketplace where you also bring in the policymakers such as government, you also bring in the project developers and project sponsors in one place. And the reason why you are bringing also policy makers or decision makers from government point of view is to also ensure that they resolve on the bottlenecks that might be there.
Okay, apparently we're experiencing sound problems, so I'm gonna ask you to hold on to your thoughts, and as soon as we return from this break, we'll have sorted out that challenge. Let's take a break.
Number of investors who came from 53 countries.
Venant de 53 pays.
The forum was instrumental in
Le
mobilizing
forum a
funding
été très important
for
dans la
initiatives
mobilisation de
diverse
fonds pour des
and
initiatives
as
très diverses
potentially impactful
et des initiatives qui ont eu un
Accra
impact important,
SkyTrain,
comme
the Kigali
le SkyTrain de
Innovation
Accra,
City,
le
the
Kigali
first
Innovation
road
City,
rail bridge project
le
linking
premier pont
Kinshasa
qui
and
lie
Brazzaville,
Kinshasa et
and the
Brazzaville,
$320 million
et les
Africa
220
Infrastructure
millions de dollars
Investment
d'infrastructures
Fund.
africains, le fonds
This is
d'investissement
an
africain.
indication
Il s'agit là
of the breadth
de la
of
preuve
investment
des
opportunities
opportunités
that do
d'investissement
exist
qui existent
in our continent,
sur notre continent,
in areas such as mining,
dans des domaines comme le
oil
secteur
and
de
gas, in
l'extraction,
infrastructure,
le pétrole, le gaz, les
agricultural
infrastructures,
production and
l'agriculture, la production
manufacturing, in
agricole,
renewable
la
energy and a
manufacture, les
range
énergies
of
renouvelables
other
et toute une
profitable
gamme d'autres.
sectors.
Welcome back and thanks for staying with us. You're watching Unfiltered tonight and we're trying to unpack the stories that have been taking place here at the Sandton Convention Center where the Africa Investment Forum is currently underway. When we went to break, we were talking to Ms. Zodwa Mbele about the role of the Southern African, the DBSA, the Development Bank of Southern Africa, in terms of the market you serve, which is essentially the SADC market, and your role here. Please just pick up on where you left off.
Okay. Thank you very much.
One.
Just
David.
maybe to put context, we are one of the founding partners of the Africa Investment Forum, and our mandate has been extended. I know the last time you checked, it was operating within SADC. Now we've expanded beyond SADC region to cover the entire continent, but largely focusing on the sub-Saharan part of the continent. Importantly, in terms of our role now as founding partners, we were also responsible for bringing some of the deals into the boardroom for discussions. We've had, in preparation for this, we've had the roadshows as founding partners, where we would invite the project developers to come to DBSA in preparation for this forum. Also, what you need to understand with the founding partners, we have to mobilize, create a marketplace where we bring in together the project sponsors as well as the providers of capital, as well as the policymakers or decision makers.
Yeah.
Because in some cases, money is not a problem in most cases, but you find that they just need to tweak one aspect from the regulatory aspect of it. Hence, it's important that as we have this conversation, the policymakers are also in our midst who promote their countries and their sectors and certain industries to understand the importance of being together. So we are creating just that marketplace for everyone to participate and make things happen from the infrastructure development.
How does one separate your role as opposed to that of the African Development Bank?
So it's not separate. I mean, as DFIs, we are meant to collaborate. We're not competing, we're collaborating. As we, look into big projects, any other credit committees, they would like to see more than one funder in each deal.
Yeah.
So there's no separation necessarily. Of course, we're different institutions. South Africa does own a bit of African Development Bank. We are not a multilateral like them. We are owned by South African government only, whereas they are a multilateral owned by different governments. So that's possibly the only difference. But in terms of the mandate, obviously they have a wider coverage, and also they have more kind of concessionary funding, so they are bigger, obvious, than the DBSA. But as DFIs, we play more on the collaborative aspect of it than just making a distinction amongst ourselves or competing with each other.
All right, we'll continue to unpack it further, but let's just bring in Mr. Muzi Matema from the Gauteng Growth and Development Agency. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. You might be speaking for a province in one country, but you are facing the major, some of those issues that have been spoken about today. For instance, the ease of doing business in the countries on the continent. Tell us about the ease of doing business in the Gauteng province and some of the challenges that you come across in dealing, one, with business from other provinces or business from the region, and then extended to business from other parts of the continent.
Good evening, Des, and good evening to viewers. Perhaps in responding to you, I think it's quite important to give a context of what the Gauteng Growth and Development Agency does. So we are the province.
I'm going to ask you to raise your voice a bit.
Perhaps in responding, is it clearer? Perhaps in responding to your question, it would be important to give context in what the Gauteng Growth and Development Agency does. So we are the province's economic development and investment promotion agency, and we exist solely to also attend to the issue of ease of doing business in the Gauteng city region.
Yeah.
So what we did back in 2012 as an investment promotion agency, we came up with a concept which was called the Gauteng Investment Center, which was a one-stop shop where all necessary investment hurdles were unlocked and all regulatory bottlenecks that an investor would face, be they regulatory issues such as visa requirements, water use license, economic impact assessment issues, basically the cradle to grave challenges that an investor faces. And the purpose of setting up the Gauteng Investment Center was really to unlock those and fast track those. So come 2016, this was adopted at a national level and became what is now called the Invest SA concept throughout the province, so throughout the country. So we as an agency exist really to address the ease of doing business for incoming investors, for outgoing enterprises that seek to expand their footprint throughout the continent and throughout the rest of the world. But just to give you context on what our role has been in the African Investment Forum, because of part of our understanding and our placement and economic location in the province, we are quite cognizant of the role of industrialization in the continent. And with industrialization needs comes the need for infrastructure rollout. So that's why we've played a critical role as the host of this province to make sure that the project preparation on key infrastructure projects throughout the continent is addressed through a platform such as this.
Adilrela Oni, let's bring you back in again. You from the Microfinance Bank. We talk a lot about infrastructure development, but your emphasis is about the other aspect of this gathering tonight, where smaller business stakeholders come in and pitch their deals that will make an impact on the different countries on the continent. You operate in that space. What are the kind of exciting projects that are coming up that we can look forward to seeing that will indicate that these kind of conversations being held here are making an impact?
Yeah, as you know, the focus of everyone is on larger ticket. You are talking about infrastructure, you are talking about energy, you are talking about power, you are talking about rail, and the rest of them. But the focus of us as a microfinance bank is on SMEs, and that is a pivot for development of every nation. No wonder in Nigeria we have Richway Microfinance Bank, that is an SME bank, purely SMEs, promoting SMEs. And in South Africa we started the Richway Financial Services May this year with initial focus on concentrating on micro loan to individuals, short term. And with the strategic plan we have, by February next year, we are looking at opening our second branch in South Africa that will purely focus on SME. Why SME? We are SME bank. Our focus, our specialization is in that area. You see, the solution to problems in the continent is developing that sector, the SME. Why? You have myriads of SMEs that are lacking funds, that do not know how to go about it, that are just there. They have the know-how, but they do not have the fund to trade.
We hear so much. There's a conversation about how to identify an SMME and how does an SMME move up from being a startup to being a fully operational contributor to the economy. What sort of conversations are you having in this regard?
Yeah, we're also looking at strategic partners, because what we have as limitation to developing the sector is funding. And this 3-day meeting is meant to look at how do we fund the most important sectors in the continent. So we are also engaging some DFIs in preliminary discussions with a view to having technical partnership so that we can also have a good financial background. I'm funding to doing more in this space. In the last 3 years, in the Nigerian market, we've done close to 200 million rand loan in form of loan. And just in 3 years.
But where are we seeing the impacts?
We are focusing on those in the fashion business, the hospitals, the gas station, the media, and a number of other companies that in that landscape, and we've done a lot in promoting their business.
And you're able to go back and measure the progress?
Yeah, there have been a lot of testimony. For the Nigerian company, we'll be having our 3rd year anniversary, Saturday, November 30, where we are bringing together all the SME that we have been promoting and funding the last 3 years, with a view to hearing from them what's the success story.
Adandrelo Oni is with the Microfinance Bank in Nigeria, recently opened offices in South Africa as well. We're having a conversation about the Africa Investment Forum that's currently underway here, and we'll continue to have the conversation after this break.
Commodity prices are recovering. Foreign indirect investments in Africa increased in 2018 by 11%, compared to 4% in Asia and a decline of 13% globally. So Africa is doing well on investments, but it still needs to do a lot more.
Welcome back, and thanks for staying with us. It's a bit of a challenging broadcast, but we'll, as they say, sizoqina bazalwane. We're coming to you from the Sandton Convention Center. The 2nd Africa Investment Forum is underway, and some of the about 350 deals were conducted last year from investors from all the African, essentially 53 African countries last year. Let's just bring in again Zoto Ambele from the DBSA to talk about, and thankfully you operate in the entire continent, just to talk about the geopolitical challenges you face as you operate with the different markets, the different clients, different spaces of regulation and policy. How do you go around that?
So I guess it's not only unique in Africa. Any other country, if you are a foreign investor, you'll always have to jump some loops and hoops in terms of the regulatory requirements for each country, and obviously also the risk appetite, it differs from one country to another. But being a DFI, we always have access directly to the political heads in those countries.
Yeah.
I mean, if you go to do a due diligence in a country like Ghana or Kenya, one of the things that we do, even if it's privately sponsored deal, we still need to go to the regulators and meet the ministers just to understand how does it fit in within the broader sector perspective, within their roadmap, so and in so doing, obviously we're enlisting their support, to bless the project. We get a sense how secure the project is from the country perspective. So we don't just necessarily go blindly just to projects that are not necessarily aligned to any national agenda of each country. Politically, there's ways and means to protect yourself against any political risk that you may encounter. If you look at the country like Zim, we have some exposure in Zim, but we have to be creative in how we mitigate that risk given the situation, both economic, I think I would say more economically than politically, but obviously the economics of it is a function of the political situation that was prevalent at the time. So what we did, we also enlist the services of the export credit insurance. So you find ways, to deal with the risk mitigation in a country that is also in dire need of financial assistance. So we can't turn our back just because it's not doable, but we need to be creative and see how best can we support the country by just leveraging on the existing mitigating financial instruments that are in place. And again, the beauty, like I said, we are owned by South African government. If chips are down, we also invoke our own political heads to also talk to their counterpart. So it's still a doable deal from where we're sitting as a bank.
So sometimes as citizens there's a temptation to get impatient because a project was announced and it's taking too long to get to fruition. What does it take, the to and fro? Take us through the to and fro of these processes that you're talking about, and what sort of time frames it can take.
Each project is different. It's very difficult to say it takes X number of months. By the way, just the nature of the infrastructure business, it's just a long-term range. It's a long-term game. It's not like where it's retail, you're selling something, it's services, you're selling something that you can see right now being delivered. There's a lot of processes that go in through it. One of the processes that take longer for us as a DFI as well, we want to be comfortable that the project meets the environmental safeguard. And if it doesn't, obviously we're patient enough to allow the sponsor to go through the process where they can get the environmental clearance. Similarly, if you go to a foreign country, you would want to ensure that you are secured from the legal perspective. It's so sound. Your security that you are getting in that country needs to be vetted by somebody independent. Either the local council, obviously they will have to confirm the security, whether it's enforceable, but also we have our own processes so there's kind of an overlay when you do the due diligence. You also want to have, if it's a technical project, you also want to have the lender's technical, advisor on maybe the technology that you are investing in. So the processes, each project, it just differs, depends on the, how onerous the processes are, whether also all the pieces of the puzzles are in place, or some of them still need to be created, because you may find that everything is in order except just one piece of the puzzle,
which is important.
That is a make or break, and it still needs to be created, still need to be obviously processed further.
Okay.
So each project differs. It takes long. I mean, infrastructure, like I say, the sheer size of it just tells you that it's not that simple to just go in and overnight you get it done. But
we're having a conversation about the Africa Investment Forum that's currently underway. We had invited the African Development Bank in the form of Mr. Pierre Guslein, who hasn't been able to make it through, but we're also talking to Adendrele Oni, the Microfinance Bank, Nigeria and South Africa based. Zoto Mbele is with the DBSA, and Mozi Matema is with the Gauteng Growth and Development Agency. We're going to have to say goodbye to our SABC 3 viewers at this point. If you'd like to continue engaging with the conversation, stay with us on SABC channel 404 on DSTV. We'll be back in a moment.